Welcome back to the Simple Steps to Sentence Sense video series. My sentence analysis program is carefully constructed to follow 8 simple steps in order. To be successful, you should not skip any steps or skip around in the sequence. So if you have not watched the videos for steps 1 through 7, be sure to click out of this one and go back to video number 1. Then come back here. If you have watched the videos for steps 1 through 7, then you are ready for the final video in the series. Hello everyone, I'm Charlene Tess, and today we are on step 8. In this video, we will learn to classify sentences according to their structure. Once you have learned to analyze English sentences, you should be able to recognize them and classify them. The 4 types of sentences include the simple sentence, the compound sentence, the complex sentence, and the compound complex sentence. A simple sentence contains one independent clause, so it's going to have one subject and one verb. A compound sentence contains 2 or more independent clauses joined by a conjunction or a semicolon. So here we have the water was cold joined by and to the other independent clause, the air was hot. So if you cover up the conjunction, you're going to find a sentence on each side. A complex sentence contains at least one independent clause and one dependent clause. The water was cold is an independent clause. It makes sense by itself. When we jumped into the pool is an adverb clause that does not make sense by itself. So we have one independent clause and one dependent clause. Of course, there could be more, but there has to be at least one of each. A compound complex sentence contains 2 independent clauses joined by a conjunction or a semicolon and one dependent clause. The water was cold and the air was hot. So there are the 2 independent clauses joined by and. There's also a dependent clause when we jumped into the pool. So this is a compound complex sentence. Here's the easy way to classify sentences in 3 easy steps. Step 1. Check to see if you can find a conjunction or a semicolon. If you do find one of them, check to see if there is a complete sentence on each side. If so, you know that the sentence is compound. If you don't find a conjunction or a semicolon, then you go on to step 2. In step 2, you check for a dependent clause, an adjective, adverb, or noun clause. If you find one, the sentence is complex. And then you go to step 3. If you found both number 1 and number 2 above, then the sentence is compound complex. But if you found neither number 1 nor number 2 above, the sentence is simple. Alright, now let's look at this sentence and see if we can analyze it. The teacher told the class to study and they would easily pass the test. Is there a conjunction or a semicolon? Yes. Is there a complete sentence on each side? The teacher told the class to study. They would easily pass the test. Yes. So far we know that this sentence is compound. We can't stop yet because we need to see if this sentence is also complex. Is there an adjective, adverb, or noun clause in the sentence? No. There are adjectives and an infinitive phrase, but there are no dependent clauses. We can easily determine that because there are not any other subjects and verbs. Remember that a clause must have a subject and a verb. So there's a subject and a verb in this independent clause, and there's one in this independent clause. But there's not a third set of subjects and verbs. So we know that this is not a complex sentence. We have determined that this is a compound sentence. Here's another example. The trees swaying in the wind looked like dancing ghosts. First, is there a conjunction or a semicolon? No. So this is not a compound sentence. Now, step 2. Is there a dependent clause? No. This sentence has phrases, one participial phrase that modifies trees, but it only has one independent clause. The trees looked like dancing ghosts. So it has a prepositional phrase and a participial phrase. Those are just modifiers, but it only has one independent clause. So if it's not compound, because it doesn't have an and or a but or an or a semicolon, and it's not complex because it does not have a dependent clause, then it cannot be a compound complex sentence. Therefore, it must be a simple sentence. Just remember that phrases and modifiers do not determine the classification of a sentence. Now let's do one last sentence just to be sure that you've got it. Mark, who never expected to win, entered the wrestling competition, and he pinned all 3 of his opponents easily. Do you see the and? Check and see if there's a sentence on each side of it. Mark, who never expected to win, entered the wrestling competition. That's a sentence. He pinned all 3 of his opponents easily. That's a sentence. So now we know that this sentence is compound. Now let's do step 2 and see if it is complex. Do you see the adjective clause? Who never expected to win. It has a subject, it has a verb. So this sentence has 2 independent clauses joined by a conjunction, and it also has a dependent clause. So it has 3 separate sets of subjects and verbs. Mark entered, he penned, who expected. So this sentence is compound and complex. It is a compound complex sentence, and we know it is because we found both step 1 and step 2. Pretty simple stuff, huh? Yes. That's what Simple Steps to Sentence Sense is all about. If you need to brush up on any of the other steps, or if you would like to practice using this one, just visit my store at teacherspayteachers.com, or just Google my name to find my books. Thanks for listening.